76 years after Valentino. Someone asked me the other day why this event is so important to me or so important to this cemetery. And I think that that answer has kind of evolved as the years have gone by. When I first came here, it was such a question. Why are all of you here? What was it about this man who I didn't really know and who I hadn't really seen that many of his films? What was it about him that has caused you to come here and each year so faithfully again and again? And that was really a great mystery, which I think year by year I've known more and more through all of you, and also through getting to know Valentino. We believe he was the first great Hollywood screen immortal, and that in a certain transition the culture was going through from royalty to celebrity. This individual, through media, reached thousands and then millions of people. And as you look across this crowd, you see that very few of you were here in Valentino's time, but a couple of you were. And all of you have gotten to know him through his films, through his photographs, through your collections, and you've developed a love for him in that way. And I think on year 5 now, this is my 5th year, I can say that that's why this event is so important to us, because that's what we believe. We want to know as an organization that wants to celebrate people and to make people assure that they're going to be remembered. We want to know why you're remembering him. And it's because of that power of the media, the power of his films, and that's what we do for everyone else. But thank you for being my teachers, and thank you for keeping the faith and keeping this going, because it's each year I kind of stand there and I'm like, will this be the year that no one comes? And each year whenever I have my question, there's more of you. There's more of you here, so thank you. It's a fantastic tribute to Valentino that you've all showed up today. But we've got a wonderful program today. We're going to begin by one of our life stories. We do these for everyone that we serve, but it's a special treat each year to be able to produce one for Valentino. So introducing it today will be Annette Lewis.
Thank you so much. I'm personally so honored to see so many of you here today. As a fellow silent film person myself, it's a real testament, I think, to the enduring star power and appeal of Mr. Valentino that 76 years after his passing, we still celebrate him and we still enjoy him and share him with others. That's a very large part of what Forever is all about, and that's why I'm so proud to be with this company. The life stories that we do celebrate the life of people and capture little glimpses, little moments that make up the big person. And so without further ado, Hollywood Forever presents a chapter, a special moment in the life of Rudolph.
strange thing happened to me at 5:20 this morning. Right above me, I heard a big crash up above, the next floor above. And that's my kind of office area. So this morning, groggily waking up, not sleeping too well, go up to see what fell. It was a lamp that fell over and knocked over my whole Valentino file with everything on the floor on the day of this memorial. Now that is strange, I must say. But anyway, I'm here to again state why we're all here. And basically, in just a few words, we are here because Valentino represents to most people and to the world a symbol of the Hollywood that's lost, that we have forgotten. A symbol of Hollywood that we're trying to resurrect and keep Hollywood in people's minds instead of being erased like the post office would like to do. I'd like to announce that about 2 years ago, thanks to Johnny Grant, you know, Hollywood has a new postmark. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's LA/Hollywood. Because mail has been returned. Believe it or not, if you put Hollywood on a letter, sometimes it will be returned. And that is the most horrific thing I can even think of as a Hollywood person. So of course Valentino symbolizes the early days of this golden era of the silent films. And of course, right behind us, right over here, is Paramount Studio, where he worked for many of his films. And also, this was also the United Studios behind us here, which was a studio that was there before Paramount. And that's where Valentino had his independent productions. And the bungalow, that his little bungalow is still there. Of course, it's been gerrymandered and changed and remodeled. But that little bungalow is still there. And of course, on the lot at Paramount, they still have the name of the building as the Valentino Building. So of course, his name is perpetuated throughout the years. But I'm here also to give you a little history of this, of what happened to Valentino in New York, and what happened when he came out here. His body came out here, and it was the most tragic thing probably at the time, in 1926, that you could imagine. I mean, it was major news. There's a newspaper headline right around the corner in here in the cubicle you should look at. It says, "Valentino dead." One of the biggest headlines I have ever seen in my life on a newspaper, and that was the Wisconsin News, mind you. You can imagine New York or Los Angeles. But anyway, Valentino arrived in New York on July 20th, 1926. He was to appear at the New York opening of The Son of the Sheikh at the Mark Strand Theater. Now, after the opening week, he left New York to return to Chicago. And on Monday, August 16th, 1926, every important newspaper reported that Rudy was stricken, and they had had 2 serious operations in New York. This is not long after that first July 20th, mind you. Now, newspapers reported that Rudy and his valet were at the Ambassador Hotel in New York when the actor gasped, clutched his stomach, and fainted. Now, on this day, Natasha Rambova, his wife, and his valet were at the Ambassador Hotel. Now, she was notified by Rudy's manager and was told about Valentino's burst ulcer, with his hospitalization and the emergency operation that was going on. Now, he was taken to the New York Polyclinic Hospital for the operation. Now, for a week, well, first of all, I should say, people thought he just died automatically right away. But no, this was an ongoing thing in which he had recovered, and people thought he would be okay. This is the tragedy upon tragedy that he would die after recovering yet. Now, for a week, there was very little information from the hospital about Rudy. Now, on Monday at 12:10 p.m., that's why we start this memorial at 12:10, Valentino had died of endocarditis and septicemia, August 23rd, perforated ulcer and complications in his appendix. Now, the Hudnut family, that's Natasha Rambova, which is really a Winifred Shaughnessy, that's her real name, would not allow Rudy to be buried in the family crypt. So on August 31st, the funeral services that were held at the St. Malachi church in New York. The body was then transferred under a cloth of gold to Campbell's Funeral Church on Broadway at 66th Street for public viewing. Now, crowds gathered before, and there were thousands and thousands of people there, seems to be perpetually there. By noon, there would be over 10,000 people in the crowds. There was actually a riot in the streets with hysterical people pushing each other, people knocked out. There was a sort of a long line of people to see the body. The interesting thing is that there was a gold room there that was transformed into a flower-filled tabernacle. and the body of Valentino, dressed in formal evening wear, lay among a statue of Madonna, a Bible, lit altar candles, and a rosary. 9,000 people per hour passed through these Campos doors, 10 hours each day for 3 days. I mean, that is incredible. Valentino was wearing a custom-made slave bracelet given by Natasha, of course, which was highlighted by the press. The pallbearers at that time were Joseph Skane, who was the head of the United Artists, and Douglas Fairbanks, an old friend, of course, United Artists, because Valentino did produce films for United Artists later on. Finally, 2 special railroad cars on the Lakeshore Limited took the body to Chicago. Accompanying the body to the West Coast was Rudy's brother and Pola Negri. Pola Negri, some people say, was the first lady in black, others dispute that. Well, we're going to get into a little history of ladies in black in a few minutes. Crowds gathered at stations all across the country as the train went west. The train arrived in the vicinity of Los Angeles on Monday, September 6, 1926. The funeral was held on September 7, 1926, at the Church of Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills, right on Santa Monica Boulevard there, and Rodeo Drive. And admission was restricted to invitation only. 300 people filled that church. That day, a crowd of 10,000 were waiting at the Hollywood Memorial Cemetery, which was named at the time, now it's Hollywood Forever Cemetery, with an airplane, get this, dropping flowers from the sky, which is true. Valentino was buried in a crypt above June Mathis's in the place of her husband, Silvano Malboni. Now, if you know anything about Valentino's history, June Mathis, the writer, was one of the first people to recognize Valentino's talent and really help build him as a star. And from then on, the tradition of thousands of people visiting his grave was started, including the Lady in Black, who would visit the grave since that time, actually. An annual commemorative service was started in 1927. Has been a tradition on every August 23rd at 12:10 p.m. So anyway, that's all I can say about that. I mean, that is quite a deal. Of course, there have been other high-profile funerals in the country since that time, but there's still something that people will never forget, that are still living, and people that were children of people that were there at that whole event in New York and all the way across the country. It's almost like a president being buried. So anyway, enjoy the ceremony, and thank you very much for coming. It's great to see all of you here.
Well, with 75 years, there's so much tradition, and this event has evolved so much. This will be the first year that, I think since 1951, that Bud Testa will not be here. We did show up at the very end last ceremony last year, but this year we believe he won't. So as a tribute to him, let's have this service in memory of him, because Bud certainly was the man who made this happen for a good 50 years. Also, as time has gone on, there's been so many ladies in black show up throughout the years, and this year we have a special lady in black seated behind me, who is also a noted historian, or will be a noted historian when she finishes her book on the Lady in Black, and is a true devotee of Hollywood history. So I'm not sure if she is to be named or not, but please welcome the Lady in Black.
Valentino's life, some of you may not be familiar with the stories behind the women who spent the last 76 years mourning his death. In 1926, crowds lined the streets of New York City. They were there to catch a glimpse of their screen idol Rudolph Valentino in the flesh. For many people, it would be their first opportunity to see him. For everyone there, it would be the last. Of course, Valentino had died very suddenly and very unexpectedly. Paula Negri, who he was dating when he died, was in New York, and she was very theatrical and very histrionic about mourning him. She cried, she fainted, she staged quite a scene for the press. At one point, she called the flower shop in New York and had her name, P-O-L-A, spelled out in red roses on the top of Valentino's casket. Fortunately, good taste prevailed, and the letters were taken off. She had a reputation for being a known publicity hound, and this sort of only confirmed it. Prior to her involvement with Valentino, she was engaged at one point to Charlie Chaplin, and then later she was romantically linked with Hitler, although she vehemently denied that claim. The American public really disliked her, especially after this particular incident. They felt that her grieving was not in any way sincere, and this, coupled with the oncoming advent of sound, really halted her career. For the rest of her life, she claimed that Rudolph Valentino was her great love. In spite of this claim, she did marry less than a year after he died, and she was never again spotted at his grave. The next woman in black is named Nitro Flemay. She is without question the most famous, the most well-known, and the most long-running of all the women in black. In the 1930s, various women would show up here at the cemetery covered head to toe in black, as I am right now, and their identity remained a mystery. They would simply show up, weep roses, and then depart. They kept their identity a mystery on purpose. No one knew who they were. In 1940, Nitro Flemay couldn't be here that year, so she sent flowers and a card with her name signed to it. That was the first point at which people identified her as a woman in black. In 1941, she came out with her story. Her story, according to legend, goes a little something like this. She met Valentino as a child and had become friends with him. At one point, she was very sick in the hospital, and Valentino came to visit her. Apparently, Valentino brought her a red rose, and he said that she would probably outlive him, and he asked her not to forget him. She, of course, made good on that promise, and showed up at the cemetery faithfully every year to observe and mourn his death. 1951 was a real watershed year for her. She showed up here, and there were actually several women in black that particular year. Not to be outdone, she fainted in front of the press and created quite a stir. People at that point lost a little bit of credibility in her. People thought she was doing it for publicity or for attention. But I do think from the documents that I've seen, she did seem very sincere in her efforts. In 1954, she showed up here covered in white with a long blue cape, and she claimed that she had a vision, that she should focus on the living and not on the dead, and she decided to become an evangelist. So she moved to Arizona and did just that. However, true to form, in 1966 she returned to the cemetery and began sporadically appearing thereafter. In 1977, she came forward and spoke with the press. At that point, Elvis had just died, and she compared the loss and the grieving over Elvis to the way people in her generation felt about Valentino. Unfortunately, her health started to decline, and she passed away in 1984. On her tombstone, it reads, Princess O. Wilson, Lady in Black. It was her wish that the Lady in Black tradition continue. Another noted woman in black, who is actually less known by most people, is named Marion K. Benda. She was a Ziegfeld Folly showgirl and was actually dating Valentino. She was the last woman he dated right before he died. Marion was a very, shall we say, unstable person. And when Valentino died, she was grieving tremendously. She attempted suicide several times. In the 1940s, she showed up here at the cemetery, claiming that she could secretly marry Valentino and born his child. Eventually, she retracted the marriage claim, but not the child claim. She was at one point arrested on a narcotics charge. She was hospitalized for a drug overdose, and she finally died in 1951. She was only 45 years old. The most entertaining chapter of Our Lady in Black saga here begins with a woman named Estralita Del Miguel. Her mother claimed on her deathbed that she was actually the original Lady in Black, and she asked that Estralita continue the written tradition. And continue, she certainly did. She was, without a doubt, the most outlandish of these women. She was spotted at the cemetery dancing on graves and talking to graves. She, at one point, whipped out a can of spray paint and spray painted the plaque on Valentino's crypt and took a nail and etched her name in the marble, which I'm sure the cemetery really appreciated that. She also ripped off a woman's veil one year and screamed, quote, "You have no right to be here." Glad I wasn't around for that one. And she was a little on the outlandish side. My favorite story is one year she got a roll of black electrical tape and butterscotch candies, and taped butterscotch candies all the way from the beginning of the door down the hallway and up to the crypt. She explained her actions by saying, well, Valentino liked butterscotch candy and he liked the color black. She continued to appear, and her last appearance here at the cemetery was in the year 2000, and then she passed away. It is important to note that her mother, she had actually disinterred from Forest Lawn and buried here. So her mother is located near Jade Mansfield over across from the pond. And the most recent woman in black is a woman named Vicki Callahan. She has a Lady in Black website. She was friends with Anthony Dexter, who portrayed Valentino in the 1951 film version of his life. And she's also promoted Valentino the musical. Yes, there is a musical, folks. And other miscellaneous Lady in Black sightings over the years have included a female impersonator, Lady in Black, alleged female impersonator, let me correct that, a child Lady in Black, and my favorite, a midget Lady in Black. Whatever their motivations may have been, these women gave their time, their energy, and their roses to keeping alive the memory of Rudolph Valentino and the legend of the Lady in Black. I would like to at this time ask for a brief moment of silence in their honor. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. It's a lot of history for all of us, and a fascinating history, but it might be the most balanced Lady in Black yet. No, we have a special highlight. It's as many of you have told me, your favorite part of the ceremony, and we're glad to have both of our performers back with us today. Bob Mitchell is a legend. I don't know what else to say besides that. He actually did accompany many Valentino films as they were playing in the theater, and according to what I read this morning, is the last surviving accompanist for silent films. And you can also catch Bob. He's still very active over at the Silent Film Theater and plays there weekly. And he will be accompanying today Ken Remo. Ken Remo is a Atlantic tenor with major opera companies throughout the country and the world, including our own LA Opera, the LA Philharmonica, and the Hollywood Bowl. Thank you for coming today, Ken.
Ken, tell our audience about the Kashmiri song, because of the significance of it. Remember that it's...
Why don't you explain it, Bob?
Well, remember that it was sung, that is, the sheet music was filmed in the picture, the sheet. And the actress here is singing, and then on the screen comes up a Kashmiri song. And she doesn't know who it is at the time. Later on, when she knows who it is, she hears it again. It's again shown on the screen. And that's why we sing that for memory of Rudolph Valentino.
Thank you, Bob. It is also known as Pale Hands, as many of you might remember by that title, but officially it is the Kashmiri song.
Rapturous road.
Okay, now we have Susan Campo, who is a professor of creative writing and also a novelist. She's going to share today some reflections of the event that she had in, I think, different years. Thank you, Susan.
Last Saturday marked the 60th anniversary of film star Rudolph Valentino's death. I joined the faithful for a curbside memorial at the Hollywood Cemetery. And what an eclectic crew they were. Virtually every age group was represented, from those who remembered to those who yearned to know more about the itinerant Italian immigrant who almost effortlessly became a screen legend in a quieter time.
The mourners' appearances have surely changed over the years. In terms of clothing, the obligatory black queens have, with one noteworthy exception, given way to a blossom of color. Hawaiian shirts, lush prints, and even one man dressed as a sheep dotted the crowd. Many brought tributes, plaques and flowers, in both plastic and paper grocery bags. The service itself is gentle, if not the slickest in the world, but then neither is the Academy Awards, and this one probably had more heart. One guest speaker reminded us of two other stars who had died in the past year, Rudy Valley and Mary McLaren. It struck me how many of the stars of the 1920s are quietly slipping away. Of course, there was hoopla and plenty of it. Not that I'm any slouch where the cameras are concerned. I'm as shameless as Norma Desmond, glorious once as Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, who, upon seeing cameras and lights, descends her stair to the smiling valley. But sometimes the day's scene seemed like an even darker day of the locust. The current lady in the lamp performed magnificently, proving that in Club Cooperland, if they don't react when the clock strikes, they sure turn it on when the lights glow. I overheard a young woman wonder aloud if people will still be gathering in Graceland on the 60th commemoration of Elvis Presley's death, and I answered to myself in the affirmative. It's hard to find a suitable substitute for Rudolph Valentino in today's entertainment world. Sure, there are adventurers, warriors, and spies, but the chic was, well, chic. Thank you.
Jimmy, what are you, an actor?
Yes.
Okay. We have Jimmy Bangley with us today, and he's going to speak on Valentino, the sex symbol.
Thank you, folks, ladies and gentlemen. Tyler, Bob Mitchell, company. Valentino fans, that's who I'm addressing. But if you'll forgive me, also the lady in black. I am happily here today to speak about Valentino, the sex symbol. You know, the one unfortunate thing about Rudy Valentino being a sex symbol is that it completely overshadowed his brilliant gifts as an actor. But I talked about that last year. So, on the silent screen, we had living people who became metaphors. Gloria Swanson was a metaphor for glamour. Douglas Fairbanks Sr., a metaphor for physical adventure. Barbara Lamar Corinne Griffith, beauty. Valentino, the sex symbol. He was not called the world's greatest lover for nothing, and no one has ever surpassed him. No one has ever kept the title. We've had Clark Gable, we've had James Dean, you can come up on and off, Ramon Navarro, but Valentino is today, 2002, the world's greatest lover. Why is that? The actress Marcia Hunt just told me, I got Valentino's message as a child, loud and clear, his eyes. Have you heard of bedroom eyes? Look at these photos. The photo on the program shows it. That searing, searing look. This sexuality, which sort of chased this private, kind of, I'd say, simplistic man, who I think really loved domestic life, who wanted to have an orchard, who wanted to cook. This whole image, this monster, I think it almost did him in, actually, if you really look at his death and what led up to it. He was almost killed by this image. But this image disturbed people, especially the moguls in Hollywood. When Valentino first started acting, he was cast as villains, as gigolos. His sexuality was almost taken as a threat. You had the boy next door, Charles Ray, Richard Barthelmess, and now here comes even Douglas Fairbanks, who was an all-American guy. You know, you can take him home to be mom, but you have this swarthy, foreign, sleek, panther-like, silkily man that all the women and some of the men in the audience were getting overstimulated with. And he was really making a lot of the guys angry. Right there on his biggest star with the Sheik, with movies like Blood and Sand, that tango that he performed. Already men were jealous. They could sit in the movie theater and look at their girlfriends looking up at him thinking, Where can I get this? He had the same thing Garbeau had, almost a kind of sardonic, dangerous sensuality. He didn't make it the first couple of years. If you looked at all the movies that they cast him as these dark gigolos, you see it for the first time in a movie called The Eyes of Youth, when he takes Claire Cunningham and kisses the inside, and when he turns, before he's angry and he's like hired to do this, you see that look in his eyes. That's what Jim Mathis saw. That's what happened to Valentino. As great of an actor as he was, everything was completely overwhelmed by this image, this new thing called a sex symbol. Surely before they had Wallace Reed, lots of good-looking men in pictures who were matinee idols. But never before did we have, we get interference from Paul Negri. Never before did we have this new raw sexuality. And think of America in 1920s. In 1920-21, the Victorian era was not that far away. He represented something new. And you know what the sad thing is? This image was so powerful, so white hot, that jealous people started writing things about him. Pound puff. You know, a way to get out of that slave bracelet that Natasha gave him. What a shame he liked such sort of dominant, overbearing women. It's something very sad about Valentino. I think all the great sex symbols have a sadness in their eyes. Look at Marilyn Monroe, even Clark Gable. Look at Jean Harlow. With all that vibrancy and physical beauty, there's something withheld. And Valentino had that in spades. He is remembered today because he has become a legend. Why has he become a legend? Because Valentino was and is the greatest sex symbol of the movies, and long may he reign. And thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Now we have, actually Valentino was also a poet, and we are going to have selections of his poetry read by Michael Goodrow.
Good afternoon, thank you. Actually, Mark Wanamaker and I, we found another piece that we thought was very interesting, so this is not necessarily poetry. It's entitled A Confession by Rudolph Valentino. This appeared in Picture Show magazine, November 28, 1925, which is about 9 months before he passed away. A confession, which will help you to understand something of the problems, not only of the writer, but those of every other motion picture star who has attained great prominence. This is going to be in the nature of a confession. I live perhaps not a Jekyll and Hyde life, but at least a dual life. There are two Rudolph Valentinos. There is the one that you see on the screen, and there is the one that you seldom see at all. One is a romantic fellow who swaggers through life, makes love with great ardor, fights, and wins battles against great odds, and in the end clasps his sweetheart to his arms, or else dies heroically to atone for his misdeeds. The other, and the real one, is a hard-working young man who has had more than his share of hardship and is now enjoying more than his share of good fortune. The interesting Valentino. I am not just being modest when I say that it is the former in which the public is interested. The popular conception of Valentino is a blend of Julio of the Four Horsemen, Monsieur Beaucaire, and the Sheik himself. I am glad that the interesting qualities of these young men do attach me in the public mind, for otherwise my lot might be decidedly different. And because I realize that my shadow self is more interesting, I am in no danger of outgrowing the size of my hat. For the same reason, I don't like to make personal appearances. The picture-going public don't want to see Rudolph. They want to see Julio. I don't want to disappoint them. The position of a motion picture star is unique and seemingly interesting to other persons besides himself. The widespread distribution of films brings him to the attention of the whole world. No other medium has ever reached so many people. He appears simultaneously in New York, Paris, London, and Singapore. Also, there seems to be more glamour about picture players than about the stars of the stage. I think this is due to the fact that the films leave more to the imagination regarding the personality of the performer. When you see an actor on the stage, you see him more completely. You know how he talks and how he looks in the flesh. By this complete survey, you may be convinced that the actor or actress is a superior human, yet you are conscious all the time that he or she is only human. But you don't get so close to the picture actor. There's something eerie in the fact that this person appears before you only in disembodied form. Distance lends enchantment to the view. Ask my valet what kind of a man this Valentino is, and if he does not give you a discouraging picture, I have mistaken the quality of his intelligence. The disadvantage of popularity. Being a motion picture star has its disadvantages. He cannot go to public places conveniently and comfortably. When he goes to the theater, he must wait until after the play has started and then slip into a back seat. He cannot make an appointment to meet anyone in a hotel lobby, for if he does, he soon will have a crowd around him. When he walks on the street, people turn and stare, and some even follow. For the sake of my professional standing, I hope this will always be true in my own case, but I am sure you will agree with me that living in a showcase has its disadvantages. Don't think for a minute that I don't appreciate the attention. Without it, I would be very unhappy, for I would know that I was no longer of interest to the jury that makes us or breaks us, the public. A real problem. Here is a problem that always seems like a new one to me. If I go to a place where a crowd has gathered, how shall I greet them? If I bow and smile, I know that some will say, well, isn't he the vain young man to think that we have been waiting here to see him? If I walk up casually with the thought, and I frequently have it, that it is foolish for so many people to come out to get a look at me, I fear that I am courting this remark. Upstage, isn't he? Too good to speak to us. If anybody can ease my mind as to the proper attitude in such situations, I shall be greatly indebted to him. If you are ever in a crowd where I am, you will know what is going on in my mind. Please, have a little sympathy for my perplexity, and please know that I do appreciate your coming, for acclaim is the food which feeds the actor's soul. If you and others like you were not interested in seeing me, I should have to stop acting and take up some other occupation. This might bring joy to thousands, but oh, the difference to me. Here is another problem that particularly embarrasses me to discuss. The attractive male part. Now, every man wants to be attractive to women, for love is the dominant note in life, and a man's happiness depends more upon his finding and winning the woman who will complement his life than any other factor. His ability to do this depends to great extent on his attractiveness, yet a man feels a bit sheepish when his own personality is up for discussion. I confess I share this confusion, and I repeat that I realize that people know my screen prototype rather than myself. I am not so modest or so unbusinesslike that I do not want to be thought of as an attractive male. This is based on two reasons. One is that every man likes to be thought of as something of a dashing fellow, and the second is that otherwise my productions would drop off in public demand. Motion picture audiences are more interested in personalities than high art. I can almost hear a chorus chanting, "You should be thankful of that," to which I reply, I am. But still, I would like to be thought of as sometimes as a man doing good work. To be called the Sheik, a term applied to me because of a picture by that name in which I play the title role, is, I must say, annoying. I am not a Sheik in the sense that the word is used. One of my brutal friends tells me that I am merely posing when I say, I don't like the designation. Well, that is a problem for the psychoanalyst, and too deep for me. Having arrived at the position of stardom, I feel a desire to remain there. This imposes upon me a regimen of living far more rigorous, I believe, than is imposed on the average successful businessman. While working on a picture, I arise at 5 o'clock in the morning and am at my studio writing ring by 6. I ride horseback for an hour under the tutelage of Mario Carrillo, a former captain of Italian cavalry, who was putting me through the same course as though I were in training to become an army officer. At 7, I go to the dressing room and I'm rubbed down by my trainer. Then I don my costume and makeup and I'm ready for work at 8:30. Acting before the camera and attention to hundreds of details which attend picture making take up my day, I seldom leave the studio before 7 at night. You will believe me when I say that I am in bed at 9. In the evening, before a recent holiday, I plan to celebrate by going to the theater. After dinner, I was so sleepy that I decided to forego even that mild dissipation. Fortunately, this program does not last continually for 52 weeks in the year. I am mindful of what all work and no play does to Jack, and I'm anxious that the same should not apply to myself. So between pictures, there are glorious holidays with motor jaunts in Spain and return visits to Italy, my native land. In connection with the conduct imposed upon a star, I might add that it is easier to become a star than it is to remain one. Once the spotlight begins to play upon the actor, he is like a specimen under a microscope. Under the magnifying glass, his wings frequently look singed, and sometimes they are not visible at all. The spotlight follows him after he leaves the studio, wherever he may go. If he should arise late some morning and neglect to shave, this has no reference to my own recent beard, the report is circulated that so-and-so, always so immaculate on the screen, is really unkempt in private life. If he mistreats his wife, he is a brute and should not be allowed on the screen. If he loves her, he is supposed to sacrifice some of his romantic appeal to the feminine theater patrons. If he appears at a cafe with a jolly crowd, he is dissipating terribly. The only place I can find any privacy is in my own house, so for that reason I stay there most of the time when I am not in the studio. In closing, I might borrow a line from the Gilbert and Sullivan Policemen and sing that the star's life may not be a completely happy one, but for me, it is the happiest I hope to find on this earth. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to welcome up Tracy Terhune, who's going to introduce our song, and Paulina is going to lead us in the prayer that was actually read at Valentino's funeral service.
There's a new star at home in that Pastorino, shining down on his loved ones tonight. There's a voice singing behind his eyes, with a smile that has made the world cry. Valentino, goodbye. But way up in the sky, there's a new star in heaven.
There's a New Star in Heaven Tonight was written as a gentle tribute to the memory of beloved Rudolph Valentino, whose death 76 years ago today stunned our nation and the entire world. Truly, on that dark night of August 23rd, 1926, there was a new star in heaven. I am honored to be standing before you today, participating in the Valentino Memorial Service. I can't help but think of the people who, like all of us, remembered Rudy and set aside this very same day year after year. They came and paid tribute in their own individual ways, some with flowers, some with a speech or a song, but all with love and admiration for the great Rudolph Valentino. Literally hundreds upon thousands through the past 76 years have walked down these very same marble floors, the very same path as you have. Most remain nameless, but some names we do know, who have made the pilgrimage. They have helped keep the candle burning, so to speak, throughout the years. George Ullman, Paula Nigri, Alberto Valentino, Roger Peterson, Mary Falscraft, Helen Tull, Jim Craig, Gene Acker, Michael and Virginia Back, Estralita, Bud Testa, Rudolph Florentino, Marion Benda, Stella Grace, and the legendary Lady in Black, Nitro Flemay. We owe these people, as well as all the unnamed, a debt of gratitude for what they did, for caring and for carrying on the tradition, just as we do here today. If you had attended Rudolph Valentino's funeral at the Church of the Good Shepherd of Beverly Hills, you would have been presented a Valentino prayer card. And in concluding today's memorial service, it seems fitting to reflect on that prayer that was offered on that memorable day in honor of one so memorable. I call for the prayers of all those who have known me, of all those who have loved me. In your charity, pray for the repose of the soul of Rudolph Valentino, died August 23rd, 1926. Prayer. Gentlest heart of Jesus, ever present in the Blessed Sacrament, ever consumed with burning love for the poor captive souls in purgatory, have mercy on the soul of thy departed servant. Be not severe in thy judgment, but let some drops of thy precious blood fall upon the devouring flames, and do thou, O merciful Savior, send thy angels to comfort thy departed servant to a place of refreshment, light, and peace. Amen. May the souls of the departed, faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.
Well, thank you for making this another wonderful memorial service as we close the 76th annual service. I'd like to thank our technical crew here, Stephen, Jay, and Jay. I'd like to thank the Valentino Planning Committee, two of whose members, Tracy Terhune and Marvin Page, shared their collections with us down the hall, as well as Susan Campo, Mark Wanamaker, and Carrie Bible, and B. Utieppo, who is our coordinator this year. Thank you for putting this all together. I'd like to encourage you all to join us this evening for the second part of our ceremony today, which is the screening of Monsieur Beaucaire, at which you may hear Bob Mitchell play his accompaniment to that. So bring your blankets, bring your picnics, whatever you'd like, and show up around 8 o'clock. Thank you.